everyone, this is the great Lord and Master Osiron, the Eternal, or the artist formerly known as the Great Roberto. This is going to be part 2 of the Tarot Zodiac Spiral. In part 1, if you remember, I made a video shortly after discovering this. I call it the alternate version of the tarot trumps or tarot keys, and now I'm changing that definitively. This isn't the alternate version. This is the version. This is the secret of the tarot, one of the secrets of the tarot. But this is perfect in every way. It not only works mathematically, it works pictorially, symbolically, in every way. This is what the tarot was designed to be. The tarot, the zodiac, aspects of geometry, the tree of life, the cube, and probably the rest, all work together seamlessly. And the tarot is the key that links them all together. It's absolutely amazing. What this is, this could be the Magnum Opus itself here. This is how powerful this is. This is sublime. It really is. I hate, and the beauty of it is, barring some small mistakes I may have made, this isn't me just spouting conjecture. This is the numbers telling the story. I'm just the narrator, basically. I'm the one who, I'm one who's solving these problems, but I'm just basically deciphering the numbers, because if the numbers are wrong, it's wrong. Now, there's so much to cover here. I mean, this is huge. What you're going to see around this tarot spiral, again, it starts here with the conception of the year, and it goes all the way through to the womb. It goes through the womb, and then it breaks through, it's reborn here, and it breaks through the abyss, and it's reborn, and it spirals around. And it actually follows the cube geometry. This is the archetypal cards of the Fool here. Everything, this shows the power of the Fool. I know, it's got off track a little bit. This shows the power of what zero is and what the Fool of the tarot really is. You can see everything, all of this comes from the Fool here, the center point of zero, the 0 point. And then these 3 cards are the archetypal cards of the cube. These 6 cards are the faces of the axis of the cube. These are the axes, but these are the faces that come off the axis. And these double rows are the 12 cards of the outer cube. And if you recall from the cube video, I mentioned that I put the 12 cards in 2 rows so I could take a picture of it, but that's not wrong. And the fact that those cards going down, reduced to 369, 369, confirm it's true, but it's also telling you how to construct this aspect of the zodiac. So once you go back below the abyss to the outer cube, you start using the cards in a double row. And that's what this is. This is what this represents. And what that creates is a spiral. If you listen to the works of Walter Russell and several other people, this is all about spirals, and this is what this is. It's a spiral that goes around, and it ends back within itself at the line again, at the line of birth and death again. Now, what you're going to see is a bunch of weird numbers on this. What these numbers are, is if you take the tarot cards, okay, and you start with the Fool in the middle, and everything comes from that. But if you start with 1, the High Priestess, and she is the rightful one, definitively. If you start with the High Priestess and start stacking the tarot cards on top of each other, this is what you get. Okay, you got the 1 of the High Priestess, and then if you stack the 2 on top of that, it becomes 3. 2 plus 1 is 3. Then, if you stack the 6 on top of that, 6 plus 3, 3 plus 6, because this card is 3, so it goes 1, 2, 3, so if you add the previous card and you keep stacking them, then it becomes 6. Then if you add 4, which is the Emperor of the next card, to 6, it becomes 10. If you add 5 on top of that total, it becomes 15. If you add 6 on top of that total, it becomes 21. And it goes all the way around like that. So what you're seeing with all these jumble of numbers here is in the number in the center of the square or the card shape is the digital root of the combined totals of the stacking of the cards, if that's making sense. And then the number that's on top of these, this is the best place to show that, the number that's either on the side or on top of it, depending on how it fit, is going to be the total that adding the next card reveals. And then in the case of the first one that we see, 6, 10 plus 5 is 15, right? So that's 15, but the root of 15 is 6. 5 plus 1 is 6, so that's what you're seeing in here. And on top of that is that. So then you got 15 plus 6 is 21. 21 plus 7 is 28. 28 plus 8 is 36. Now it goes, and it ends with the last card being 21, the world, but that adds to 231, and that reduces to 6. Okay? Following? And what you get when you do that, okay, is you see over here, I have, because it's kind of hard to see what's going on unless you're staring at it, but this is what it ends up revealing. Remember, this starts in winter, remember, at the conception of the year, and this is what we have over here with winter. Winter produces a code of 136, then you jump into spring, and you get 163, then you jump into summer, and you get 199, and you're going to see a powerful significance of what that represents, the 2 9s there. And then you go into autumn or fall, and you see again 136, but in this case there's 2 because there's 2 cards being used. Now you get 2 sets of numbers. So in the fall, below the abyss, you get 136 and 163 in that order. And then you cross the line back into winter again, and you get again the 199, and then it ends with 136 again at this line. Okay? And then, with the final 2 cards of the Zodiac Spiral, can you see me? With the final 2 cards of the Zodiac Spiral, you get Judgment, which is 20, and then the World, which is 21. But the stacked numbers of those come to 210 and then 231. Well, if you add those 2 cards together, it becomes 441. And that, of course, reduces to 9, and that's what ends the whole thing with 9. But the significance of 441 being that number isn't just the fact that it reduces to 9. It breaks it down into the elements and, the divine holy power of Kundalini. So we get the element, you get one masculine expression of the element with 4. You get one feminine aspect of the elements with the other 4. And then you get Kundalini itself represented as 1. And that becomes that. Now we see that same number combination in one other spot in the stacked numbers. I'm going to call the total of numbers stacked numbers, so that way when I say stacked numbers, you'll know I'm referring to the totals. Over here between what is the Wheel of Fortune and Justice, the stacked number becomes 66, and then it goes over to the next card, which is the Hanged Man, and that stacked number is 78. What happens when you add 66 with 78, you get 144. And again, we're seeing the aspect of the separation of the elements and Kundalini in the stacked numbers. And of course, 144 is also 12 times 12. And if you recall from my Proof of God videos, every 12 spaces on the Fibonacci sequence reduces to 9. Okay? Alright. This is just so much going on. I hope I don't miss anything in this video, because I really want this to be thorough. All right, now over here what you're seeing, you see this, it's called elemental constructs. There's one thing I want to point out, there's one thing I want to get to that's very important. On the first video of this series, I'm probably going to remake that because there's a lot of things in it that I want to fix. But I postulated that the elemental manifestations on the true tree of life really go water, fire, air, and then earth. Well, now that does make sense. As a matter of fact, it makes perfect sense. But the only thing that's bothering me about that is it doesn't show an obvious representation on the zodiac. Because if you look at the cardinal elements, the onrush of the elements, which is feminine, you see it fits the other pattern, because the traditional pattern is fire, water, air, then earth. Well, you see that in the zodiac here. You see cardinal fire is Aries, and then water, cardinal water is Cancer, then cardinal air is Libra, and then cardinal earth is Capricorn. And that fits the other aspect of the tree of life, or the so-called tree of life, in its pattern. But there's one thing you got to understand. This construct here is a representation of its physical manifestation. This is sort of through the perspective of the jewel of creation. The true tree of life is beyond this world, so it's not necessarily going to show up in an obvious way on the zodiac wheel. If, as an example, on the jewel of creation, it goes, the whole thing is earth, but then it goes air, water, and fire. Well, we see that all over the zodiac wheel. That's how the elements go. And it starts right here with the conception of the year. We get earth, then air, then water, and then fire. And we see, and that's how the elements form from the conception of the year. The birth, it starts with fire, but the conception, it starts with this. So I'm like, man, so that was really, really bothering me, because I was starting to think, well, maybe I was mistaken about that. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe that's wrong, but it's not wrong. At the very least, I'm also postulating that the water and fire aspects of the elements are in constant flux. They're always switching. When one's water, the other's fire. When one's fire, the other's water. And we're going to see that on this wheel as well, how that happens. And we actually see that here. You know, we see 1, 3, 6, then, which is feminine, and 1, 6, 3, which is masculine. Feminine, masculine. You know, we see it here, feminine, masculine. Then it ends with feminine. So it's the 3 and 6 are in constant flux. I'll get to more, but I'll stay on that for now. And we see this here. So if you go, we start with 1, 2, and then when we get to the 3 of Pisces, which is 12, and it reduces to 3. We get to the 3 card, which is the Empress of the Empress, and that is obviously a 3. Well, its root is 6, so we're seeing 3 and 6 in this. Now, not every one of those does that. So then when you keep going, you got 1. Now this 6 doesn't do that. This 6, the card is 5. But the root is 6, and that becomes 11, right? But that's also the second house too. So, but now when we get to this card, which is going to be the Lovers, the card is 6, but when it's reduced, it becomes a 3. So we're seeing the alternate here. And then we go over here, we go around this wheel here, then we get to the 9. These 2 9s. I just want to add something about that real quick. Now we're seeing something here, we're seeing 2 9s, but the stacked number is 36 for this, and then it's 45 here for this. Well, those houses of the zodiac are also fire and earth. Well, what does fire represent in the Kundalini grid? It represents the Kundalini itself. The Kundalini is fire. So we see the cardinal, the cherubic element of fire. The sun it rules this house. It's Leo, and the stacked number is 36, which become 9. And over here we see masculine Earth of Virgo, which is the Hermit. That's why the Hermit's masculine. And it becomes 9. The root is 9, but the stacked number is 45. Okay, so if you recall from the Kundalini grid, 3, 6, and 9 represent Kundalini, and the other numbers represent the material world, and that's also congruent with vortex math, if you recall. So that's why, again, all of the synchronicities, all of this, once you dial in to the single-digit code of 369, once you dial in right and you hit it, it becomes perfect, as I've shown in every one of these constructs. Okay, now you go over here and we see another 3, but this doesn't do it either. What this does, the root of this card is 2, and that becomes 5. But the stacked number on this is 66 again, so there's something going on with that. And 66 becomes 12, and then 3. But then we go to the Hanged Man, which is 12, but it becomes 3. The card itself becomes 3, but the stacked number reduces to a 6. So again we see the oscillation of 3 and 6. And we go over here, bam, bam, bam. This doesn't do it. Temperance doesn't do it. That becomes 5. That becomes 2 again, 11. Temperance becomes 11, which is 2. But remember, this is a masculine exertive sign here. This is masculine fire, the exertive aspect of fire. So we're seeing the root again of 2 here. But then we go to the very next card, which is the Devil. You know, if you recall from the first video, I made a big deal about this card because the Devil is normally assigned to Capricorn, but no, make no mistake, it definitely belongs here. And the Hermeticists knew that. I'm going to get to that in a second. But the card itself is 15, which reduces to 6, masculine Kundalini. But the root of the stacked number, which is 120, becomes 3. Okay? Now, one thing about the Devil, if you look at the Waite-Smith version of A215, the Devil, you see a devil, and then you see two humanoid creatures beneath it. One's a man and one's a woman. You can't see my hands. I'm making gestures with my hands. One's a woman and one's a man. Right? But the devil has a torch in his hand, but he's pointing the torch downward. Okay? What that means, what that torch means downward is there's only one fire sign below the abyss. This line represents the abyss. There's only one fire sign below the abyss. And the card is telling you that that's where card 15 resides, where it's supposed to reside in the masculine fire of Sagittarius. It's telling you that clearly on the card. And then if you look at the figures, the humanoid figures, the man, the man would be here and the woman would be here. The man has a tail of fire, and the woman has a tail with grapes on it. And grapes is a occult symbol for earth, bounty, prosperity, earth. So we're seeing the tail of this creature fire, and the tail of this woman is earth. And they're chained loosely together here. So and the cycle repeats again with the final act of our year here, the final act of the life of this thing with the devil. And if you see, remember, as I stated, this is a womb period. The winter is the womb. And life actually begins here with the onrush of fire, and it goes around 9 months later, and it ends with the masculine exertion of fire with Sagittarius. Then it goes back into the womb again. It dies. It's conceived again with a spark that is the tower. It gestates, and it's born again from the Empress into Aries, the Emperor, which is a baby. Okay? Now, I know I've gotten off a little bit, but just bear with me. There's so much with this. As I was that long discussion was sort of evolving from was that the true tree of life, using water as the supernal, then fire, air, then earth, doesn't show up on the external expression of the zodiac, but it actually does. If you take the stacked numbers over here at the abyss, remember 9 and then 1 again, if you take 45 and add 55 to that, that becomes 100, which of course reduces to 1. Now if you take the 6 and add 10 to that, it becomes 16, which reduces to 7. So if you take the 7 of this side of the line and add it to the 1 of this side of the line, it makes that whole abyss line an 8. Okay? So then what we see over here is I got the 8, but if you turn the 8 on its side, it forms an infinity symbol. So now what you get, now this is sort of an unconventional aspect of the zodiac, but it works. So now if you take the idea of water, fire, air, then earth, and apply that to the infinity symbol, we start in Pisces. So we got water, and this is the abyss. This would be the supernal triangle. It goes into fire of Aries, which would be the, I'm not sure, I can't think of what triangle that's called offhand, but you know, the second stack of stuff I wrote. Okay, so water, fire, and then it goes to air of Libra in an 8 pattern, and then it goes back to Virgo with earth, and then it repeats again in an endless infinity loop, whipping right through this. Okay, and then at the same time with the jewel of creation, not only does the jewel of creation show up in the elemental zodiac everywhere, but don't forget the jewel of creation is not only our bodies and lives, but it is the material matrix itself. So not only does that show up with the construction of the elements, but it also shows up on the other significant axis, the solstice axis. Right here is the summer solstice, and this is the winter solstice. So that shows up on that. That doesn't show up as an infinity loop. It shows up as a perpetual 0. So now what you get, if you recall that the jewel of creation is earth, and then the next element of the supernal triangle, in that case, is the mind, then it goes over to water at the heart of it, right? And this is cardinal water at that, and then it goes to fire, masculine exertive fire, and then it goes back to earth again, and it goes in a continuous loop like that, circular. Okay, and we see this on the abyss, the line of the abyss line, and then we see that on the solstice line. Produce both of those, and the beauty of that is the true tree of life is actually the birthing of the material world. It's the aspect of creation, and it's, remember, it reduces to 333, which is the Empress, and it's the process of birth. It's the process of creation. So, but on that tree, it forms the masculine, infinity loop, which does that path. I have it in red as masculine, but then if you go to the jewel of creation, the core of what it's doing is feminine, with the circular oval here. You know, the circle, the 0, the yoni, whatever you want to call it. But so it's producing that with its construct. And out of both of these constructs, the only cards that never get used are the cherubic elements. So in this aspect of the jewel and the tree working together, the cherubics never get used in this case, but we're seeing it. We're seeing the masculine and the feminine signs, the cardinal and the masculine signs working together, oscillating back and forth. One forms this infinity, the other is 0. So that's where the justification for putting water before fire comes from. Oh yeah, and the reason this is masculine, the reason I have this masculine, because on the true tree of life, the fire aspect of it is in the heart of the construct. Because if you remember, Tippereth, I don't have the tree here, but Tippereth is the center of the tree. That's the heart. That represents the heart. And on the feminine tree, which is the true tree of life, the heart of it, it has a masculine heart. The jewel of creation is a masculine construct, but it has a feminine heart. So we see again the continuous oscillation of 3, 6, 6, 3, over and over and over again. Just a few more points. This is huge, huge. This is the secret of not only the tarot, but the tarot, the zodiac, geometry, the tree of life, the jewel of life, the cube. And it probably works with the other platonic solids too. I just haven't got to that yet. Okay, now, you see these, in each quadrant here, you see a 1, a 1, a 2, and then you see a 1, 2, and a 3. What that is you'll notice that each of these rows here, each of these string of numbers, ultimately reduce to 1. Okay? And what that tells you is sort of, it's sort of a confirmation of how many rows of cards to use. So we see a 1 here, right? Actually, we'll start here. We got I'll start here because it's simpler. You know, but I should start here, but to convey the message, I'll start here. You see a 1 here, that represents 1 row, because 6, 3 plus 1 is, reduces to 1, so you see 1 row. Same thing over here, this reduces to 1, and you see 1 row. Over here, all the cards reduce to 2, 2 1s to get 2. And over here, remember, this isn't exactly 3 rows. It is 3 rows, but it really starts out as 1 row, and it's just a continuation of the 2 to finish up the spiral. So this row reduces to 1, and we get that. This second row reduces to 2, we get that, 1 and 2. And then when you combine the 2, it becomes 3. For 3 rows used. And this gets back to the nature of 1 and 2, of what 1 and 2 really is. I mean 12, which 12 is? 12 is a divine measurement, as I say over and over again, and as this proves. But what is 12? At face value, when you look at a 12, all it is the 1 and the 2 again. And that's it. And when you combine the 1 and the 2, it becomes 3, the pregnant empress. And then the process keeps repeating. But 1 and 2 is 12, and it reduces to 3. So when I say 12 is masculine, well, 12 isn't really masculine at all. It's androgyne completely, because it starts with feminine of 1, and then the masculine of 2, and then when you combine those 1 and 2, it becomes 3, and then it gives birth to the child of the emperor, or Aries, and all that. So we're seeing the correlation to all this. And it also tells you with Saturn, again, as I got into before, Saturn rules these 2 houses, and then the tarot cards fall there. 1 is a masculine aspect of Saturn, and, 1 is the feminine aspect of Saturn, and 2 is the masculine aspect of Saturn. If you remember, both of the cards here add up to 10. Like this house added up and this house together added up, reduced to 10 or 1, the 1. And that's what you get with Saturn. So that's why Saturn does that, because it's the feminine and the masculine aspect of God, basically. That's what that is. 1 and 2, and then when you combine those 2, you get the life of the Empress, the pregnant. Your life becomes pregnant and alive after that. So that's what there's just so much more. There's so much more. Here's how things link together, because if you recall, the true tree of life tells you to use 22 when you add the middle pillar. Well, we see that here in the zodiacal wheel and the tarot trumps too, because what you get here is 9. when you add up these cards, this side becomes 2, this side becomes 7, and of course that reduces to 9. We see that 9 right here. Well, if you take the tarot cards that fall in these two positions, this is card 6, the Lovers, and this is the card 7, the Chariot, or the Blood. Well, if you add 6 and 7, that becomes 13, which reduces to 4 up here. But if you add, in its raw form, if you add 13 to 9, it becomes 22. Okay? And of course, if you add 9 and 4, it becomes 4 again. It becomes 13, which reduces again to 22, which adds to 4, and then we're seeing the 4 quadrants of the zodiac. That's where the 4 comes from. All this stuff meshes together like a gear. It just works just like this. Perfectly. This is perfect. There's just so much more here too. It's just, you know, these triple digit numbers tell a special story too. I'm not going to get into that here, but they do. The way the triple digits interact with each other tell a beautiful story of what's going on. And the same thing with all the numbers. But I think that might be it. I think I covered most of what I wanted to get to. But I know I'm going to think of other stuff, because I know there's more to this. You know, it's just so much. I mean, there's so much going on here. It blows your mind. Oh, it blows my mind. This is perfect. This is the secret of the tarot. Definitively the secret of the tarot. And and how the tarot interrelates to the zodiac. Again, as I said, in the the tree of life, all of it. So I'm just gonna look real quick to make sure I got everything. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I covered most of it, but there's more to it. You know, just keep looking at it if you want to explore it yourself, because there is more to it. I know I'm missing stuff. There's a shit ton more stuff in here, and how all these numbers interrelate. You know, actually, one thing I do want to get to, I just want to mention one quick thing. As I mentioned before, this is the conception of the year, and this is the birth of the year. And on the other video, when I made the video about that in the zodiac, I put 2 numbers for here. I put 1 and, like over here, I put 1 and 4 together. But you don't really need to do that. You don't need to put 2 numbers for the houses, because if you start with Aries here at 1, and you go around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The end of it, the end of the life ends with 9 anyway, so you don't need to put a 12 there at all. I mean, you can if you want, but you don't need to. So the 9 is telling you it's the end anyway, and then it jumps over to, you know, what we call the 10th house, but that reduces to 1, and then 11 is 2, and as I said over and over again, 12 becomes 3. So you don't need to put a second number here. Or you can just start this at 1, and it tells the story as if you put 2 numbers. You know, it tells the complete story as it is, including, you know, the Hermit. The Hermit definitely belongs here, and the Hermit in this case is masculine, as I said, because Virgo is masculine Earth, and it goes into a completely new world. This ends the inner cube, and it goes to the double outer cube. It goes below the abyss, and things change dramatically at that point. It goes from single cards to double cards, and then the spiral ends going into the perfection of 9. And what's beyond this line, nobody knows. But you can bet, sure as hell, that it does something. It goes somewhere. You know, you can bet on, because this is what it's telling you. Life is a spiral, it never ends. There is no such thing as death. There's only perception. There's only what we can see. Oh, there is one thing I want to get to. Again, this video might be longer than usual, but I don't give a shit. It's the nature of 10 and 1. The nature of 10 and 1. See, 10 only shows up as a 1 in the material world. In this world, it shows up as a 1, but in the spiritual world, it shows up as a 0. So 10 is a 0 and a 1, but it's contingent on what world you're in. In this world, it shows up as a 1. In in the world of the true tree, it shows up as 0. That's why 1 is, even the guys of Vortex Math confirm this. 1 is a number that gets to traverse both worlds, the spiritual world and the physical world, but it doesn't have the power of 9. It's limited, its capacity is limited depending on what world it's in. Because if it's in the spiritual world and it takes the place of 0, well, then it becomes 9 by default anyway. So 1, 0, 1, 0, and 9 work together in a very weird way, depending on world it is. And now, one thing that I want to get, you see, I'm recalling all kinds of stuff. On the true tree of life, and then on the jewel of creation, we see the aspect of Kundalini showing up in different aspects of its creation. On the true tree of life, remember, I'll use the supernal triangle as an example. It starts out with 0, and then goes to 1, and then goes to 2. Okay? And in this case, Kundalini, and then the next row is 3, 4, and then 5, and then 6, 7, and 8. So on this world, Kundalini shows up first. In the true tree of life, the aspect of Kundalini shows up first. On the jewel of creation, the aspect of Kundalini shows up last. Because on this, it starts out with 1, then goes 2, then 3. And then on the other world, it's the opposite. So, and again, that 1, that number 1 is a weird number. 1 is a very, very strange number because it interacts in such a weird way. But everything, everything ultimately reduces to 3, 6, and 9. The code, and this is just amazing. I'm just blown away by this. So I think I got most of it. I hope I did. But namaste and thank you.